Welcome back, dear viewers. Thank you for staying with us here on The Breakfast Show. Our first topic on hand for discussion here are the economic achievements in Egypt here in the past 8 years since His Excellency President Al-Sisi took office. And we will be talking about how the Egyptian economy was resilient in the face of the many challenges in the past years, including the coronavirus pandemic. Of course, there was great cooperation with the International Monetary Fund, which has repeatedly praised the Egyptian economy's resilience, and of course, big infrastructure projects and also many initiatives aimed at alleviating the pressures and at giving Egyptians a decent life. For instance, the presidential initiative Haya Karima, or Decent Life, and other initiatives in light of cooperation between the government, the private sector and non-governmental organizations. So the economic file and the sustainable development file and the advancement that Egypt has seen in that regard in the past 8 years will be up for discussion here with our distinguished guest here in the studio, Dr. Zeinab Nawar, Professor of Economics. A very good morning to you, Dr. Zeinab. Always a pleasure to have you with us. So many challenges the world has faced in the past years, including the coronavirus pandemic and now the Russia-Ukraine war. The Egyptian economy has been resilient. Talk to us about the advancement on the economic file in the past 8 years, if you will.
First, we will start by Corona, and we would say that we had a lot of challenges starting from Corona, entering now to the war between Russia and Ukraine. Every day we have a new challenge worldwide. Actually, we became in a world which is so changing, a lot of crises, I'm sorry to tell you that. And now if we'd like to tell about the Egyptian economy, we have to think about what we can call economic resilience. If we'd like to talk about the achievements of the past 8 years, you have to link what happened in the past 8 years to what's going on now. If you can judge that we are in Egypt, we have some degree of resilience or economic resilience, being flexible, trying to deal with the international crisis, which had been repeatedly, we still have, for each and every month, we have a new crisis as a consequences of the war between Russia and Ukraine, or as a consequences of 2 or 3 years of the pandemic of Corona. So we are in a world which is changing. I'm sorry to tell you that we are not going into, worldwide, we're not going into a good direction. We're going in a world full of crisis. So back to Egypt once again. We had done a lot along 8 years, starting by a lot of projects that had been done, infrastructure projects.
Yeah, the mega infrastructure projects. A lot of money was poured into that.
With that, and also a lot of opportunities of jobs. Mm-hmm. And creation of thousands and thousands of opportunities for a lot of companies and a lot of laborers and workers working on these projects. Unfortunately, we was in deadly need for a lot of infrastructure projects in Egypt. So the infrastructure projects and all of these mega projects had brought a lot. Number one, fixing a lot of problems related to the infrastructure leakage. If we talk about roads, bridges, and whatever, new cities, all of this is number one.
Transportation.
Number two, dealing with the severe poverty that was in some areas, in some villages, and poor villages in Egypt, as a result of the leakage in the infrastructure. So definitely, the mega project had put a base for a while for dealing with some of the leakages that
that have been
is
there
facing the economy.
yeah,
yes, and also is facing the poor in some areas in Egypt. This is number two. Number three, a lot of initiatives, because we cannot talk in this few minutes about everything,
you're
but
right,
I want
you're
to link what had been occurred with what we are now. If we didn't work on what we had done the 8 years, if the president didn't work on what we had used to work now, I think that if we talk about the economic resilience of the Egyptian economy in dealing with the continuous crisis, worldwide crisis, I think maybe we became a problem.
Yeah.
So it is very important from the normal citizen to understand that if we didn't have a good quality of infrastructure, so many of us, maybe they wouldn't have the opportunity to have good jobs. If we didn't have a lot of initiatives for the healthcare and the healthcare provision.
Yeah, speaking of the health initiatives, very successful.
Dealing with the virus C.
Yeah, and even the virus C.
Yes.
So the 100 million initiative. So in the health file, there was a great advancement that helped Egypt face Corona in a better way than most other nations.
Starting by virus C and also dealing with the Corona and the vaccination that most of us we had the opportunity to take it wherever, in clinics and in public clinics and hospitals. So if we didn't have the chance, if Egypt didn't have the chance to work on these bits and pieces initiatives for healthcare, there would be other problems now.
Right.
Other thing that we had worked on the Egyptian government also have been successfully working on, is trying to push and to encourage the private sector and the small and medium enterprises and the microfinance also to be provided to some of the startups. If we didn't work on that since 8 years ago, along different reforms, along different steps and stages, I think that we will say what we can say that if we didn't get the product from out there, so we should depend on the Egyptian manufacturer and we should depend on the Egyptian private sector. So like what the president had made or the Egyptian government had made, that we had broadened the scenarios and the options. So you have many options to deal with to attract FDI. If you are not able to attract it now because of the crisis, so you have the basis to encourage the private sector and the Egyptian manufacturer, which are more important than the FDI, and the crisis had showed us so. If you are not able to get food from out there, so the project that you had made for the food satisfaction would be in your, would be one of the main bases that you had created for the food satisfaction.
Can we say, Dr. Zeinab, that there was a lot of flexibility from the part of the Egyptian government in dealing with different situations and in adapting with different situations? And what made me ask this question is when you mentioned the food strategy, and before that you mentioned depending on local manufacturing. That has to do with I guess floating the currency to encourage exports and to try to lessen imports and depend more on the local product. And before that, there was that decision in November 2016, again, for a free exchange between the Egyptian pound and international currencies. So maybe flexibility from the part of the government on that side. And now we are hearing calls and bigger voices for depending on the local product, depending on food security here at home, and again a free market for the currency. So can we say that this flexibility, can we use this word first of all, and can we say that this is helping in dealing with, and this is a vision actually, and that this means that there has been a vision for the future here in Egypt?
The economic flexibility, we call it economic resilience. And this is one of the main topics that have been highlighted in a lot of discussions lately. When the leaders of the world, before the Ukraine crisis, they were talking about economic resilience, the flexibility of the economy, what had been created and how it would sustain and how it would have a role when we are in a situation of crisis. So definitely, yes, if we didn't work on the multi-actions and sectors on different scopes and different scales, I think our ability to deal with the crisis, I think we will be not in this type of efficiency, because till now we are an efficient dealing, or efficiently we are dealing with the crisis. We have a lot of tools and a multi of tools we can work with. If we are not saying that we are not a free market and we are not encouraging the exportation, so if we are now in this situation, so how we ensure that we can have more of US dollars, more of foreign currency entering into our economy, and how we are going to deal with the crisis of the reserves and getting more US dollars from out there.
Yeah, we
you
need more
encourage
exports,
the
yeah.
exportation, because export, this is what will bring you the money, and this is what will do like this type of
balance.
Again, balance, and also in a way or another you are trying to make your currency is better in front of the US dollar. You have to create a demand on our products so you can create the balance. If there isn't a demand, if you didn't encourage the private sector and the small and medium enterprises, if you didn't build a new and small factories everywhere in every governorate, so how you would encourage exportation?
We've been hearing the government repeatedly in the past few months talking about more involvement of the private sector, even sometimes calling on the private sector itself to get more involved and giving it more opportunities.
More incentives, try to encouraging them, giving them loans with less interest rate as possible, trying to create the grounds to them, trying to give them trainings and courses through different economic, of course, governmental and public places. Public places also, we have a lot of agencies and governmental agencies. They are offering training even for free for the startups.
And there is a partnership now that we can see in many big projects, right, between the government and the private sector, that partnership.
Yes, public-private partnership. This is part of the partnership that the government used to do also during these 8 years for the provision of multi services, which is good also, to create and to look for a partnership. Number one, to lessen the risk for the government. Number two, to bring of course, it's a cost-efficient factor. Number two, also to bring in new tools and means and know-how in the management of these projects, because this is what we do need also as part of economic resilience. You should be able to manage the crisis. You should be able to manage your business during the crisis. How you do that, if we're talking about only the government will do that, no, this would be done through the partnership with the private sector.
How do you see the government's performance in getting tourism back again on its feet after Corona, in keeping, in fact, the Egyptian remittances from abroad are increasing, the Suez Canal revenues are also increasing. So how do you see the efforts in this regard? And how do you see the progress in the big dream of us Egyptians, depending on the local product, because that will make a big change, positive change.
Of course, we had done a lot. If we talk about tourism and new initiatives, new even discounts that had promotions, and all of this had been done. But unfortunately, the war also, I think, it affected also the flow of some of them coming into our lands. So. Unfortunately, lately the war between Russia and Ukraine, I'm sorry to say that it has its consequences for that. For the Suez Canal, we had done great. We had, for the Suez Canal, if you talk about the fees of the Suez Canal had raised the fees several times, but gradually, and this is very normal. Why? Because there is a huge increase in the, what we can say, freight rate. And all of those agencies worldwide, they are increasing their prices. So I think this is very normal from the Suez Canal to increase the fees and the requirements. This is very normal. So we are working well in this direction.
The new Suez Canal
yes, of course,
project.
yes. So we have to benefit from this situation, because we have other parts, we have a crisis in other areas. So when we have a sector which is booming in a way or another, so this is very normal from the Egyptian government to think in that way, because we have this geographic and excellent geographic location, and under any means they have to pass from Suez Canal, so they have to pay.
The local products.
Number one,
we need to do more,
still need to do more. Because the local manufacturers in Egypt, they're still suffering, and they exert a huge effort to start their own work and even to look for markets. I think it's in one another we need in the government. I don't know how to tell it. We have to look out there. We have to study the demand worldwide. We are in a changing and dynamic world. We have a lot of leakages out there. I think more guidance and direction still needed to direct the local manufacturer how to compete, what are the criteria of competition, how to have different scenarios, how to manage his business in a way that should be cost efficient. Once again, we should put thousands of lines under cost efficient. Why we are saying that we want to depend on the Egyptian manufacturer now during the crisis? Because the Egyptian manufacturer, if you talk about the scale of a small and medium, is more flexible. Back to the concept of economic resilience. Why? If you talk about small, so maybe he's hiring up to 10. So maybe he will work online or have a small place to work from. So he has the lowest possible cost. So he would be able to produce at the lowest cost, and then he can also sell at the lowest price. So he would be able to compete. So all of these agents with the small and medium enterprises will be able to manufacture and produce. And also they can export during the crisis. Because the crisis now, worldwide, some, we cannot say that all of them yet, some of the giant manufacturers and FDIs worldwide are collapsing now. They cannot sustain with this huge cost of this continuous crisis out there. So when we look for our small and medium enterprises and agents, we can, through the right direction, through the advice, through doing whatever economic studies to tell them where are the potential markets, what they do. Till now, the Egyptian exporters, they are doing all the efforts by themselves, and they travel by themselves out there looking for opportunities. Where is the government in that? There should be more rule of this. There should be more rule for whatever the agencies that are working in the government, embassies, for example. We need more dynamic efforts, because there is a chance, and the chance is there. If we didn't benefit from this now, so we are wasting this.
We need that.
Yes.
Now, the economic reform program was a necessity in the view of many experts, but it did have its burdens on the citizen. And the president himself thanked Egyptians several times for bearing with him and for being patient. So a comment on that point, perhaps, the burdens of the economic reform program, with the repercussions was inflation and so on. So the citizen, and maybe this is why we saw great initiatives like Haya Karima or Tahya Masr initiatives to alleviate the pressures on the citizen and to fight poverty and to fight the greed of the merchants and some of the merchants, so and to fight inflation. So a comment on that point. The burdens of the economic program, at the same time, the presidential initiatives and the governmental initiatives that have helped ease those difficult times.
We have a dilemma in economics, and even we had it even in one of the readings of Stiglitz. Of course, the famous economist Stiglitz said that sometimes in economics you have what we can say that the benefits are dispersed. What do you mean by the benefits are dispersed? However, the cost may be concentrated. Sometimes you do an economic action and it's for the benefit of the society. However, because the benefit, most of us we cannot see because it is dispersed. I mean, it is distributed and divided along all of us and along all of the economy. So for the normal citizens, he can't see the effect of what's happening. Maybe he will see it later. Maybe the effect is happening right now, dealing with the crisis of the war. So if we talk about the citizen and the burden that he had, Unfortunately, when we talk about the economic reform and the loan we took from the IMF, we had to do that at that time because we needed to have a certain amount of money coming into our reserves, and it would be we would be in economic crisis if we didn't increase the amount of the reserve. So this was a necessity to be done. Maybe the normal citizen wouldn't feel that because he doesn't feel it on the ground in a material thing. And this is why we have these initiatives of Hayya Karima and Takaful and Karama, trying to give more material impact into the citizens. The issue that is how to give the material impact, how to make the citizens feel the material impact, which is very hard to happen. And sometimes
it takes time.
It takes time, and it's not happening right away. And even our economists and worldwide economists, they're talking about this. Sometimes the benefits are so dispersed, so you cannot. You had to do the action, but however the benefits and for the public, they are not feeling what is happening. But you have to do it. And another thing, about our relation with the IMF and World Bank and all of this debate, because we had started lately to have a lot of debate, even from my colleagues and everywhere, saying that why we had taken this loan and what's the importance of the IMF and World Bank and all of this. First, when we took this loan, it was a necessity for the Egyptian government. And second, we had used them to do like a marketing for our economy. We needed this also. We need these international organizations to write properly about the Egyptian economy. And we needed also to adopt the free market system and the free market economy, and trying to encourage the private sector and to increase exportation.
And to draw investments.
We had, if we didn't do that, we are not working with the flow. We will be against the flow, and this will not be in the benefit for all of us. So once again, going back to the economic resilience, what we had done, we should have done this. If we didn't done that, so I think dealing with the current and continuous crisis, and every day, if you can just watching the TV, you will see new crisis because of the war.
This is the final point. Historically, Egypt has had a very solid banking system, and I guess our solid banking system is a major reason for the stability.
Yes,
that
of
we
course,
are
and it's
enjoying.
one of the indicators of the strength of the economy. And also the banking sector has made a lot of rules, starting from whatever the good and perfect management of our deposits and also our investments, and we still have, and we can also rely on this strong economic sector, which is the banking sector. So we have a lot of tools on the ground. We have a lot of what we can say different windows and different disciplines. We have a huge human factor with huge capacity. We should use it to the maximum.
The future brighter, inshallah.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zeinab Nawar,
you.
Professor of Economics.
Thank
Always
you
a
so
pleasure
much.
to have you with us.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, please stay with us. My dear colleague Mahesti Rabia will be here shortly to resume this morning's edition of The Breakfast Show. Don't go away.